In this video, I'm going to have a quick look around Google Meet, and I'm looking at the free version here, the one that we can all access. I'm actually logged into my Google account. You can see in the top right hand corner my initial D there, and I accessed Google Meet by clicking on the 9 dots just to the left of where my D is, but you can also just type meet.google.com into the URL bar and you'll come to this screen here where we can see we've got loads of support options, we can find out more information, and then also on the left hand side we've got the option to create a new meeting, or we can enter a code or link if someone's shared a meeting with us so we can join a meeting. I'm actually going to click on new meeting to see what the options are, so let's jump into it and have a look. When I click on new meeting, if I just move my mouse out of the way, you can see that I can create a meeting for later. So if it's something that I want to start later on today, I can start an instant meeting. So I'm going to jump straight into that meeting room, and I can also schedule in Google Calendar. I'll need to be signed into Google, so it's all linked together nicely as well. Just that's super helpful if you're scheduling a meeting in the future and you do have a Google account. Even if it's a free one, then you can schedule those in Google Calendar as well. But just for this recording, I'm going to jump straight into an instant meeting so I can quickly walk you through and give you some of my top tips that I consider quite useful functions when I have to use Google Meet to collaborate in meetings and sessions with other people. So when I click on start an instant meeting, the meeting room's going to open for me. Okay, so the meeting room's open for me. Now I have quickly just turned my camera and my microphone off just so we can focus on the functionality in the screen and we can see exactly what's going on. The main black background there is where you would see my video, where you would see numerous videos if there were plenty of people on this call. And it's where you would also see content that someone had shared in the meeting. So we've got 3 sections to really talk about, except for that background. So let's have a look on the top left hand side at the moment where it says your meeting's ready. This is where I can quickly add other people to my session, because at the moment I'm the only one in here. So I can't really collaborate with everyone. I'm not going to talk to anyone because I'm the only one in this meet. So when I click on add others, you can add other people in your address book, emails that you already have. You can type in if they don't pop up in your suggestions. But if you don't have their email or they're outside of your organisation, or you actually communicate with them in a different way by WhatsApp or an instant message via another system, you can just copy the meeting link and then send that to them in whichever way works for you. And you would do that just by clicking on the rectangle with the L to the left hand side. And that's going to copy the link, and then you can paste that into whatever you're going to share with the person. So they can then click on that link, or they can come to meet.google.com and pop the link in that box and open up the Google meeting and join you. Just give them a little bit of time to work through that process, and hopefully they will pop up in the meeting sooner rather than later. So you've got some quick tools there to help you get people into your meeting quicker. I'm just going to click on the cross to remove that so we can focus on the other 2 areas. The first one, I'm going to come down to the bottom. So we've got some nice functions on the bottom, and then I will finally finish in the top right hand corner. So in the bottom left hand corner then, we've got meeting details, and again if I click on that up arrow, you can see there I can copy the joining information. So even though I've removed that box, I've still got that joining information available. And I can also see attachments. So if this was sent as a meeting, or if something was shared in the meeting, I can see attachments there. So I can access any documents. I don't have to move away from the meeting. I can just access them within the meeting, which is super convenient, super useful. So I'm going to just drop that back down and move towards the middle of the bottom. And I've got 3 buttons, and these are pretty self-explanatory. I've got my mute and my unmute, I've got my end call, and I've also got to turn my video on and off. So, one of my real top tips and one of the challenges I always find when I'm on virtual meetings is I generally put myself on mute when I'm not speaking, so there's no feedback and any noise going on around me is not interrupting the meeting. As soon as you get to a point where someone asks you a question or it's your turn to speak, there's times where you absolutely have a panic. I'm sure it's not just me, that you want to quickly unmute yourself so you can start talking, so people think you're there, you're listening, you're paying attention. And sometimes when you've not clicked on your screen in a while because you're listening to someone, your laptop or your desktop takes a few seconds to wake up and you have to click a few times and then move your mouse and get the button in the right place. And it just seems to take forever, even though it's maybe a couple of seconds. So what you can do, and what I'm going to do is just hover over the mute and unmute button, and it's probably quite small, but there's a shortcut there, and this is super useful for Google Meet. Now I'm actually using a Mac laptop, so my shortcut might be different to yours. If you're using a PC, then you are going to use Control and D, but because I'm using a Mac, I'm going to use that in that funny little command key with a letter D as well. And using that will help me very quickly unmute and then remute myself when I've finished whatever I need to say, rather than having to stress around, figure out where my mouse is and make my screen wake up. I can just use that quick shortcut. So for PC, it's Control and D. For a Mac, it's Command and D. Nice and simple. And you do have the same option if I just hover over the camera as well. You have a similar option with the camera. Rather than a D though, it's the letter E for elephant. And it works in the same way. If you want to turn your camera on while you're speaking so everyone can see you, but then turn it off to have a little bit of privacy, or because maybe your bandwidth is struggling and you really want to make sure that you're not the meeting's not buffering or you're not losing signal at any point, you might only want to have your video on for a certain portion of the meeting. And it's probably more important when you're actually speaking so people can see you. They can see the person who's having those thoughts. So definitely use those shortcuts. I use them all the time. Across any platform, they're all slightly different across each platform, but a shortcut to unmute and mute yourself is like gold dust for me. It's super, super useful. To the right hand side then, I've got a couple of options. I've got turn on captions. So this option here, now I am on mute, so you're not going to see any captions come up. And actually the system recognises I'm on mute and it can hear me talking. So it's asking me if I want to unmute myself, which is really useful in case you've forgotten. And then you're going to hear in your earphones, you're on mute. We all do it at times. We all forget to unmute ourselves. So Google Meet is just trying to help you. When the captions come on, it'll be attributed to the person who's speaking and it'll be in the language that is chosen. There is somewhere else that you can turn on captions, and you do have a few more options, and I'll show you that very shortly. But you can turn on captions down the bottom, and it's really helpful if you're in a noisy environment, so you're struggling to listen, if you're having hearing difficulties, or if your bandwidth is really struggling and the connection is not amazing and you're really struggling to hear what's going on. Captions will just help you follow along without having to listen. Just turn those off so they're gone. Presenting's always a great option to talk through. And depending on what your meeting's about, then you might pick a different presenting option. But we have here the entire screen. We've got a window, so an application, and we've got a tab as well. So it says there that tabs are really useful for video and animation. Basically, just because you're showing one tab, then you're going to reduce the amount of data going through the meeting. And if you've got video animation on there, you've got more data coming through. So it's going to make it a slicker process, and it's less likely to start buffering and crash on you. I tend to use my entire screen. I always really tend to share my entire screen when I'm doing any sort of meeting, any training session across whatever platform. It just means that I can flick between different applications and I can pop up anything, and I know that whatever's on my screen, everyone in the meeting can see. Now, because I do that, I need to make sure that anything private and confidential is closed, any notifications are turned off so nothing's going to distract, and also I'm not sharing anything that I shouldn't be sharing. But that really works for me. But you might just want to open a specific window if you're just going to have a conversation about a document or something else. And like I said, a tab is really useful if you're going to share anything that's going to take a lot of bandwidth up, like a video or animation. So when you select those, I'll just very quickly show you to have a look at the entire screen. Because I might have multiple screens, so my laptop or desktop might be linked to a second screen, it actually allows me to pick which one I want. So I'm just going to click on cancel. Have a think about what you are doing in your meeting before you decide which option to use for sharing. If you do share just a window, just an application, try and remember that if you do need to flick to something else, because you might then think you are sharing something that you're actually not. If you've gone from a Word document and then you move into an Excel, but you've forgotten to reshare the Excel. And it's easily done. We've all done it plenty of times. Finally, at the bottom then, clicking on the three dots opens up a world of opportunities here in Google Meet. So Whiteboard is a really useful one. It's a Jamboard, and in there you can all access a board where you can rename, you can download the information. Basically, when you're in a meeting room, you can go to a whiteboard or you can go to a flip chart and just start putting things down and collaborating and being all creative and sharing your ideas. When you're in a virtual meeting, it's much harder to do that, but a Jamboard will give you those options. You've got pens, you've got markers, highlighters, sticky notes, you can add images, pop them in order, shapes, text boxes, you've got a laser pointer tool. There's tons of ways there that you can add stuff onto that board, and like I said before, you can download it, you can rename it to something that makes sense, and you can share it with people once you've completed it that actually weren't in the meeting as well. So you've got loads of great options there to help you collaborate in a virtual meeting. When you've got multiple people in the meeting, you can actually change the layout as well. So you can change the way it looks on the screen, the way where people's videos are, and the content that's being shared as well. We've got the full screen option, and if you do have your video on, then you can upload a new background. You can pick a background, maybe you want a blur, or you can pick a specific picture that's already on there, and you can upload your own background as well. Really useful if you're working in a tight space. It's not really an office environment that you're working in, but you're making the best of it. So you can just pop something behind you that makes you look a little bit more professional, or maybe hide something that you don't want people to see. Maybe you've got a messy bookcase behind you or something like that. Down, and then you've got captions, and I mentioned this a few minutes ago. So when I click on captions here, it's just like the option at the bottom, except for it's going to bring up a box and allow me to choose the language I want. Now there's not every language on there, but there's quite a few common languages there that you can pick from. So you can pick the one that most people in the meeting are speaking, and then that will again help anyone who's struggling to hear what's going on, making it super inclusive and making sure everyone can follow along with the session. And just underneath the line on those three dots there, you've got the support sections, troubleshooting, help, and your technical settings for any audio and visual settings as well. Okay, that's the three dots. So finally, just at the top then, I've got a couple of options here that I haven't mentioned. I've got my two people, which will show me who is in the meeting. You can see it's just myself there at the moment, but I can add more people here as well. Remember, I could do that in that box on the left-hand side. Anyone who's down here, I can mute or unmute them, depending on who's organised the meeting. And I can also pin myself to the main screen as well, so that people focus on me, even if someone else is speaking in the meeting. Maybe it's a presenter you want to focus on. Even if someone's asking a question, you want that presenter there. In here as well, I have the option to go to the chat section where I can type in a message. I can copy and paste a link to a document or a survey or anything else that I want to share with everyone in the meeting. And then these 3 shapes will also take me to Whiteboard. So they'll also take me to the Jamboard section where I can open up one of those. And again, the link for that will be pasted in the chat section for everyone to join. When I click on that cross, you'll just see that actually those options are at the top there as well. So it doesn't matter which one of the 3 I click on, I'll be able to access all of those 3. And just click on that cross then to remove once you've worked with what you need to. So you've got that nice space where you can see videos and shared content really, really easy to view. I do have my initials in the corner, and I do have the layout and the pin option up there as well if I want to quickly pin myself or I want to change my layout once more people are in the meeting. So there's some really useful features here in the free version of Google Meet. Obviously, if you've got a Google account and you've got a paid account, you'll have more functionality like breakout rooms and all sorts of great things. But this version is available to everyone, no matter what account you've got, and there's some really great functions to help you manage, collaborate and work with people in virtual meetings. So have a go. Remember, it's meet.google.com and see what you can do with Google Meetings. Jump into one and just have a play around with it like I have, and get yourself used to the functions before you then share a meeting with someone or pull someone into the meeting, so you're really comfortable with how to work it. Have a go and see how you get along.